Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Canadian Missing Project, copyrighted edition for a video channel. And weird day in northern Montana today. Winds blowing 30-35 miles an hour. Temperature was the warmest it's been all year at 84 degrees. And we're under a flood watch in Columbia Falls. The rivers are flooding or very near flood stage. Creeks in the area have a flood advisory from the National Weather Service. So very odd for this time of the year. And we are concerned moving forward because it has been so warm that the snowpack is going to melt really quick, and that's why everyone's concerned. But this is Missing 411. I'm David Paulides, and this is a segment on missing people. And we're going to talk about some letters, we're going to talk about some missing people, and we're going to talk about some things that you have brought up just recently. And right out of the chute, we're going to talk about a missing person. Not a 411 case, but hundreds of you have brought it up to me in the last week. And that is Dylan Rounds. Now, Dylan was last seen May 28, 2022 in Montello, Nevada. He's from Lucene, Utah, 19 years old. All of Dylan's vehicles were found on his farm in Lucene. One thing missing was his wallet and phone. Foul play is suspected. Search parties are being conducted. This is Dylan. Now, a lot of you sent me an email, etc., about this case because they found his boots at his farm. Now, this always helps when you dig a little deeper. So I like to look at Facebook posts by family because they're a little more open about things than law enforcement is. And they'll talk about certain indicators to them, what was right and what was wrong. So the first thing is, the sheriff's office out there stated that his boots were found on the perimeter of the property, and his wallet and his cell phone are missing. That's not good. And obviously, everyone knows you can track somebody by their cell phone. I get that. And I'm sure the criminal has that. Now, he was in another city right before he disappeared. The parents stated that his truck had the front seat moved up like a real short person was driving. Now, Dylan wasn't real tall, he was 5'10", but he always liked to drive with his seat back. Then the other thing they said is that Dylan's truck had been pressure washed, and that wasn't something he normally did. Those two things by themselves, coupled with the wallet and the cell phone being gone, coupled with the profile that the family gave of Dylan, I hate to say it, but to me, it has all the indications of a straight murder. And pressure washing a truck will do it. But I am praying that the sheriff's office sent that truck to the FBI evidence response team in their local jurisdiction. And you may ask, well, why do you say that, Dave? Well, one time, a long time ago, I was talking to an agent who worked on the response teams, and everyone's a local evidence response team. And he said, Dave, if anybody ever sat in that truck, we could prove it. And what he meant is by touch DNA, by finding hair fibers, by where people touch things in a car that they don't think about. Giddy up. So, Dylan's truck was there. And I know that the Box Elder County Sheriff may not have the resources. But because, this is important, because this is where his farm was at, way on the outskirts of Utah, right near the Nevada border. Because it's right on a state line, and the chances are the suspect crossed a state line, the FBI can get involved. And that's why I hope and I'm praying that Box Elder use some smarts and call them out to work that truck. And even if they haven't yet, if somebody knows those parents, you tell them that you want the FBI to get involved because of possible crossing state lines. And you want the evidence response team to work the truck. Now, somebody sent me something that was ridiculous. They said, hey, Dave, this is right near Skinwalker Ranch. No. In fact, Skinwalker Ranch isn't even anywhere on this map, and it's way, way, way out here. So, no, not even near Skinwalker Ranch. But one thing when I read about Dylan, and if you're in Nevada, Utah, pay close attention to this. These type of criminals like to brag. They like to talk about things. Keep your ears and eyes open. Dylan was a really, really good young man. He bought some property from his grandfather, and he was working it like a hard-working soul does. He didn't get distracted by playing games online. He was a 100% worker. And many people said he was born 50 years too late. Whatever happened to Dylan wasn't fair. And I hope we catch the individual or individuals that were responsible for this. And we find Dylan soon. Okay, let's get into some other things now. That was not a missing 411 case, but so many of you have asked me about Dylan that I decided to bring it up and discuss it. The other thing that's had a lot of life just lately is talk about me leaving this site. I've got to leave. Some of you don't understand, but I've got to leave. They've already given me one strike for a video that had nothing in it that was controversial or was not a fact. So I know they could strike me and shut down my site at any time. And they've already restricted me from putting up a pinned statement at the top of, that's Huck, putting on a pinned statement at the top of the video and responding. Even if I put up one of your statements as a pinned statement and I responded to it, I couldn't even see any of the responses you gave to it. That's called managing the site by them to ensure that I start to lose contact with you. Now, I read all of your posts on this site, and I comment to probably 5 or 10% of them. But probably 90% of the comments I'll give a thumbs up to. Now, what's odd about that is if somebody else has given you a thumbs up and shows one thumbs up, and I give it another thumbs up, my indicator on the site will show that I gave you a thumbs up, but the number won't increase, which is really odd. And I think it's trying to show that maybe I'm not involved or I'm an uncaring host. Whatever it is, I hate it. I despise it. So, I'm going to ask you for one thing. Do not make a recommendation on what site I should go to, unless you know 100% that the site meets the following requirements. And I'm going to tell you again, I've told you many times, but this is important, folks. I've had other people say this doesn't exist. Well, I'm hoping that it's going to come along. First of all, the site has no censorship. Obviously, if somebody puts up a crime in progress that they're injuring or hurting somebody, that has to be taken down. There has to be some level of censorship, I understand. But no censorship based on politics, based on right and wrong, whatever. Okay? No censorship. The host, me, has to have access to your comments and the ability to respond. It has to be subscriber based. And why is that? Here's an example. Rumble is a site that hundreds of you have told me to go to. Well, I had an appointment with a Rumble executive, a vice president, to talk to him. He sent me a note. He responded he'd be available. I was there at the time. He never was there. I responded twice back to him. He never responded back. They don't care. I have several friends that have gone to Rumble under the monetization program and have told me that, as an example, for 15 minutes of content, let's just say, I'll throw a number out, YouTube gives me $1. Let's just say. Well, on Rumble, you get about a penny. That's right. That's how worthless Rumble's monetization is. So, not going there. I have to be able to upload 4K video. And why is that? Because when you look at it on your big screen at 1080, it's going to look bad compared to 4K. And I've always recorded in 4K. It has to be subscriber based. And why is that? Well, because I need to be compensated for my time. And I'm spending a lot of time educating the public, doing this for you. And it's not costing you and has cost you nothing. So after I've gotten your confidence and after I've obtained your trust that this isn't a waste of time, I'm going to ask for a small subscriber fee to watch my programs. I also need a site where I can upload up to 90 minutes of video in one sitting. A lot of sites only allow 15 minutes of upload. That's not going to work. No limits on the number of uploads. And the maximum cost that they can charge me is 10% of whatever my subscriber base is. Yeah, all these sites charge anywhere between 5 and 20%. So, anyhow, those are my requirements. Now, have I found a location that does this? Nope. Does a site exist? I don't know. But just about every site you can imagine does not do what I just said. And a lot of sites that you said, oh, this doesn't have censorship. I've sat down and had conversations with almost all these major sites, and they all admit at the end, yeah, we have censorship. Yeah, well, we might do that, we might not. No, I'm not interested under any circumstances if there's censorship anywhere near what YouTube does. Forget it. So, on to the letters. Hi Dave, I have some bad news regarding the new platform for your channel, the one you're looking for. I didn't see it yet, nor my American colleagues didn't. YouTube is the god, plus it is part of Google Incorporated. It pays the best, although they could only pay fairly. I got a colleague who's live streaming sometimes even over 4.5 hours. Yeah, you know what it is for sure. Someone doesn't like your content in the same situation. I don't know. You've heard of various sites. Went so far as literally erasing them just like they're trying to do to you. Unfortunately, they are one of those what I call the gatekeepers. Yep, this is the sign of the times. If you look back just 10 to 15 years, people didn't talk as much about all this unexplainable things happening on a daily basis around the world. Wouldn't you agree? For sure. Anyways, I wish someone digs up the channel fit that you need. Cross my fingers. Thank you. I hope we find it. I hope we find it. And I know I'll get a lot of nasty comments about, well, why are you going to a subscriber base? Well, because everyone's time is worth something. And if you don't think that my channel would be worth something, then don't come over. Obviously, I've tried to do something here that's unique, compassionate, and caring. And contrary to what a lot of channels do, I don't give you information without a source. And if you can't confirm what I'm saying, just send me a note. I'll be glad to respond. Now, I'm not going to dig into and find every last news archive that justifies what I said, but I'll find a majority of them for you. Next letter. Hey Dave, my brother knows a man from the Salt Lake City area whose father is a Mormon bishop. So a Mormon bishop is the person who's the highest in charge of an individual church. They're like a president of that church. He is a friend of the ranch owner at Skinwalker Ranch. He traveled to the ranch at Brandon's request. He said as the chopper descended to the landing spot at the ranch, he was overwhelmed by a feeling of evil. It shook him a bit. He said it seemed to him as if this place were some very evil, sinister things had happened and had stained the area forever. He was glad to leave when the time came. Now, I've heard about your episodes at Skinwalker Ranch and thought I'd share this story. I live about 25 minutes from the ranch in Vernal, Utah. I also grew up with a person on that show. I had a friend who was a police officer for the tribal police in Roosevelt, Utah. So Roosevelt is one of the closest towns to the ranch. He told me this story one night at a family party. His name was Josh. One night he and his partner got a call from dispatch. Someone was calling about a strange trespasser getting in their garbage or something in their backyard. They were given an address, and when they arrived, they realized that they were just outside the east end of Skinwalker Ranch. Little did they know that this was probably a key factor in what they were about to experience. They had the owners of the house on the phone as they pulled up the driveway. The owners were describing a small humanoid creature with big eyes and that was hiding behind their propane tank. Houses here are rural and natural gas is not common, so families use large tanks of propane for gas heat. Same here. Sure enough, as their lights shined on the tank, they saw a small oval-shaped head protruding from behind the tank and slowly slid down behind the tank as if to hide. They both saw it and made remarks about how big its eyes were proceeded by and followed by several colorful expletives. They watched it peek up from behind the tank and lower back down a few times. He described to me an oval, almost round head, gray in color, about the size of a basketball with very large eyes, a small mouth, and an almost ineligible nose. They were shocked, he said, and joked that they had zero training on dealing with this. The two officers quickly formulated their plan. My friend would sneak out of the car and move behind it and back around the other side of the house and approach it from the side and behind. His partner would stay in the vehicle and remain in contact with Josh via radio. When Josh was in position, he would signal his partner and would run up to it and snatch it as so many great stray dogs, he said. Josh left the car, snuck around behind the house, and signaled his partner. His partner exited the vehicle, upon which a strange creature immediately sprang straight towards Josh, but upon seeing him, turned and ran through the knee-high sagebrush like a flash. Josh described its motion as jerky and quick as lightning, moving from behind bush to bush, using them to conceal himself. He then described to me how the rest of the fascinating creature looked. He said it had a small, frail-looking body, almost just bones, but obviously strong and athletic. It was all gray with a large head, out of proportion to its size. Maybe stood 3 foot tall. It was very strange looking and, quite frankly, left him shaking in his boots. The creature stopped maybe 40 yards away and began peeking around behind a bush as it had done previously. He was stunned. He regained his courage as his partner caught up to him, and they both pursued it through the sagebrush a short distance. He turned around and ran straight towards, you guessed it, Skinwalker Ranch. Its speed was amazing and made it obvious that they would never catch up to it. They just watched, wide-mouthed and silent, as it ran to a line of large cottonwood trees and marked the edge of the cursed property and disappeared in the foliage. I have no idea what they told the homeowners or what they wrote up in their report that shift, but the experience changed their view of this tiny, mysterious planet. He also said that one night he got several calls from residents in Fort Duchesne, that is the closest city. All of them said that a creature was jumping from roof to roof through the town, a creature that was described like the rake or a crawler. Google it, they are white-skinned, hairless humanoids that skulk or crawl around dark places and rooftops. Other times you get calls from tribal members that had seen bright lights and UFOs just a few feet behind their houses, flying along slowly, sometimes hovering over a house for a while, then moving on and then suddenly just zipping away at tremendous speed. Similar to what they talked about in the last episode at Skinwalker Ranch. Interesting. Very interesting. And you got to remember that this is happening in or around a Native American reservation. And why do I say that? Because Native American reservations have a long history of this type of activity. And people may laugh and giggle. It's not funny. And I know it's credible because I've been to too many reservations. I've spoke to too many elders, and they've looked me in the eye and told me similar things. Maybe these people are related to it in some way that we don't understand. Many Native Americans say they come from the stars. I don't know. Next letter. Hey Dave, my name is Mike and I hail from Southern Illinois. I was introduced to your work through the Vanished documentary, and I've been watching you on YouTube for quite a while. Just for clarity, it's not a documentary. Vanished is a show that was on the History Channel, a 2-hour special that I was the executive producer of. And we went up to Mount Shasta, went to the Four Corners area, covered some real interesting disappearances. You can watch it on the History Channel. I own no part of it. They get all the money. I just want to thank you for the research you do. Those missing voices from the past have a great deal to do with what's going on our planet. I am mystified by these disappearances. Too many secrets, too many conspiracies. The reason I'm writing this is I recently viewed one of your Can-Am videos detailing episodes of missing time. Me and my mom experienced such an event while traveling to St. Louis, Missouri for one of her cancer treatments. She's 86 and cancer-free, thank God. While traveling from our home in rural Illinois to the cancer clinic, we suddenly found ourselves in unfamiliar territory. Keep in mind we traveled this route for several occasions, never once seeing anything out of the ordinary. As we drove north on Route 127 out of Nashville, Illinois, we suddenly noticed that the grass was a deep and penetrating shade of green. Maybe Huck didn't like that. She gave us a little bark. It's okay, girl. It's okay. She's laying here at my feet. It was a deep shade of foreboding green that you see before any thunderstorms strike, very indicative of tornado weather. Yet there was no weather around us, not even a cloud in the sky. And I swear, Dave, the air smelled so electric that I thought the car was overheating. It was like a deep-fried ozone smell, yet everything seemed so fresh, so new, and undisturbed. We never saw a single car on that 20-mile stretch of rural road, which is insane due to the road linking up to I-64. It's a major shortcut to St. Louis, and it is always loaded with traffic, but nothing today, not even a breath of air. When we finally turned onto Interstate 64, we pulled off at the next exit and just sat in the car. This exit was strategic in that it was in the exact halfway point of our travel time to St. Louis, about 2 hours total. We had left our home at 6 a.m. on the dot. It should have been 7 a.m. at our midway point. It wasn't. When we looked at the clock, hey, come on, it's okay, it's okay. When we looked at the clock, our phones, my watch, it was 8:15 a.m. Somehow, a 40-minute ride took us 135 minutes. We took it as a warning. And we listened. We turned around and went the long way home, never left the interstate. I'm an engineer, sir, so I work around power communications for 35 years. I've never experienced an electrical phenomenon like that in the field. We had the overall impression that we were continued on our journey forward, that something bad was going to happen to us. The hour and 15 minutes of fast-forwarded time is still a mystery. We just can't understand where it all went and why. I know you get a lot of emails and letters. I really appreciate you taking the time to read my message. So coming from my background in MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, these things happen a lot. And they're probably reported less than 1% of the time because people don't know where to report it. They don't know who to talk to and who they can trust and who's going to laugh at them and who's not. And truthfully, hey, stop it. And truthfully, the reality of the situation, there's not a lot that can be gleaned from even the representation that was given to me by this man. Not a lot to be learned. Now, some people say, well, why don't you go into reverse hypnosis and find out what happened? Well, that's a double-edged sword. I think under the right people, it might work. But I think that under the wrong people, they can impart things in your mind that you think happened to you that really didn't. So that's why. Bud Hopkins was great at this, and I wish he was still with us, but he's not. Next letter. Having tuned in every week to your videos, I just wanted to comment on a couple of things that have me thinking. You often talk about UFO subject. I find it very interesting as I believe the missing person phenomena, cattle mutilations, and the UFOs are all very likely linked. All of these represent some other form of intelligence that we can only observe and guess at. Personally, I'm well past do UFOs exist. They sure do, and despite what the scientific community says, there's plenty of solid evidence. You know, to me, stories of sightings, UFOs are rather old hat and almost boring. The quest is rather to determine maybe what they're from, or how they operate, what they're after, or what do they want from us. So stop for a second. When people say, well, I don't believe UFOs exist, think about what you're saying. UFOs, it's an unidentified flying object. If you haven't seen one of these in your life yet, you need to start watching the sky more. Some of us see them a lot. And just think of what I am saying. It's an unidentified flying object. I'm not calling it a spaceship. A UFO can mean a lot of things. So to say they don't exist, I don't even know what you're talking about. One effort that has always frustrated me is the SETI project, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. In my opinion, this is a huge waste of time and money. I believe that as well. A huge waste of time and money. For some reason, those involved with this seem to think that some distant life form is going to send us messages, perhaps in English or Morse code, to inform us of their presence. These scientists apparently have some kind of preconceived idea of how another form of life would make itself known to us and comply with our rules of engagement. 100% agree with this. This reminds me of the tale of the religious zealots who were stranded in a boat on the ocean and were praying to God to rescue them. Along comes another boat and implores the crew to hop aboard, and they'll take them to dry land. However, the zealots say, we are people of faith and know that God will save us in his own miraculous way. So they decline the rescue offer. The zealots eventually perish. They turn down the only opportunity they promised from salvation. The reason for their folly? They had some kind of preconceived idea of how God works and failed to recognize the chance they had been given. In the same way, the SETI people have focused on a perspective, other intelligence, and I assume it will comply with an understanding. Let's face it, if they were ever to do research, some kind of signal, it will only create more questions than answers. What really kills me is that while they're busy sending out, or hold on a sec, Huck's making a lot of noise. Okay, girl, come on. Okay, let's go outside. Okay. Now maybe we'll get some peace and quiet here in the studio. Thank you. UFOs are landing in their backyards, but apparently that phenomenon does not compete with them or is not in their lexicon of understanding or worthy of investigation. Go figure. Just one other topic. As you mentioned canines, I prefer just simple dogs, are almost always employed in search and rescue for a missing person. The reasons are pretty obvious. I did a little research about things I was wondering about, but not all my questions were answered. It might be nice if on one of your presentations you could explain the capabilities of search and rescue dogs. Some of the facts I gleaned were that SAR dogs are usually between 1 and 4 years old and are usually retired after 4 years. Nah, not true. Some of them are a lot older than that. The ones we used were. Their training usually encompasses 600 hours. Some of the most popular and best dogs, Golden Retrievers, Labradors, German Shepherds, Bloodhounds, Dobermans, Rottweilers. St. Bernards have a very good nose in the cold, hence the title Mountain Dog. Apparently some dogs can detect a human scent up to 1 month after the missing person is gone. Many of them can work tirelessly for 8 hours a day and more. A couple other aspects I didn't determine were when it rains or snows, which in many of the cases it does this make it more difficult for the dog to pick up a scent? If a person walks in a stream, does the dog lose the scent? No doubt they will be led along the water's edge to see if the scent continues further along. However, does the water dilute the scent of the person? Despite a 1 month claim of detection, how quickly does the scent of a person deteriorate so the dog has difficulty continuing picking up the scent? I know one thing, if I was stranded in enemy territory, I wouldn't be worried about people picking up my scent, but I would if it was a dog was around. As soon as they bring out the dogs, you may as well just turn and run or turn yourself in. Thanks for this excellent work, Dave. You've had some very good videos lately. I told my friend who lives up north about your comments on bear spray and other precautions. Much of the time I'm thinking about what I hope you'll say, and a second later you're saying it. Great stuff. Take care. Thanks a million for the letter. That was a good one. Appreciate it. Now, a couple of things here that I want to address. First of all, when you talk about dogs, think about people for a second. And you go, what are you talking about, Dave? Okay. Let's talk about a police detective. Police detective, been on the police force, let's say 10 years. Been to a lot of specialized training. And he worked on the streets of San Francisco. You have another detective, works for the sheriff's office, and he's worked in the county of, let's say, Missoula, Montana. Then you have another detective that worked on the streets of New York City. Maybe they all had the same specialized training, but they're all different. Some detectives are really good and motivated. Other detectives went to that line because they wanted to retire, move slow, do a job, not get out of uniform, not have to face the public in a uniform, end of the confrontations. A lot of them. But there's a lot of them too that are really, really good. Detectives are just like dogs. Some are good, some aren't so good. Some are motivated, and some aren't. Just like dogs. And some go to very advanced training to get really good and smart about their job. Same with dog handlers and dogs. Now, as I've stated many times, when I worked at San Jose Police on their SWAT team, the canine team was assigned to us. And every Wednesday for 10 hours, those dogs trained. Every Wednesday. And the dogs are only as good as their training. And if their handler isn't committed to a high level of training, dog's not going to be very good. And dogs are like people. Can you get a dog that really isn't motivated? Of course you can. Can you get a dog that really isn't interested in doing the job? Of course you can. So every once in a while you're going to get a dog that probably shouldn't be in the field with the officer or the search and rescue handler. But the number one issue is how well trained that dog is under various conditions, various weather, various sounds, and around other people. And if other people make the dog nervous, not good, because it's always going to be around other people. So I wish I could be more clear about this. There are dogs I've seen hunt people down through rivers, through creeks, through rain, wind, hail, snow. I've seen it all. And I've seen other dogs give up on a whim. So there's a wide variance of dogs. If you're ever involved in a search and a dog gives up, would I give up? Not a chance. I put 3 or 4 dogs on the trail. That's right. Because every dog is different. Hope that answered the question. I wish I really can't be more specific because some dogs have unbelievable ability. Next letter. Hey Dave, good day to you, sir. Just a few words about one of the profile points that is a constant theme in most of the profiles. Have you ever looked at the scientific research or data that explains how incoming storms and barometric pressure changes effect on human behavior? You know, it is a key factor that drives animals to feed, rest, move, etc. Animals and fish. I question it also has the same basic effect on the human brain, which causes a shift in what would be deemed normal behavior. Search parties and the people that know these missing persons best often seem perplexed by strange or out-of-the-character choices made by the missing or very experienced outdoorsmen and mountaineers, though this would not on its own be solely responsible for ever finding any trace of some missing persons. It would glean insight as to why people seem totally oblivious to pending major weather changes and go about their planned outing as if everything is completely normal. Could rapid swings in barometric pressure cause psychological issues that significantly alter someone's reality or realm? Weather being the major profile point that often makes or breaks searches is also a point we have the most scientific data on to research. Its undeniable importance to the entire topic of missing 411. Many prayers to you, Dave. Thank you. Next letter. Hey Dave, I've been trying to understand the actions, not the actors, of the mysterious disappearances spread over the years and generations throughout the world. Immediate renditions without a trace, incongruous time and distance displacement, inexplicable trails of belongings, no predictable recovery or survivability patterns. Abstract. The method or rendition and subsequent treatment of the missing are not dissimilar to how human children play with ants. You can stop here if this is too far afield. I have the utmost respect for your work and time. No, I'll keep reading. In an effort to remain objective, I refrained from motive. As preposterous as it sounds, if you can look past scale, the experience of the missing is quite similar to how children are playing with the ants. I'm saying this via email, not in the comments, not out of shame, but because this is far out there. I would not want to appear as a joke or set off any readers thinking I do not take this subject seriously. I most certainly do. I don't know what's doing this, but it's similar way kids pick up ants out in the open, not from their homes, when conditions are right. Summer days, foraging ants are displayed for the kids. If a child plays with an ant, where and how they return it as close to the location from where they acquired by it is their estimation. Whatever the ant was carrying may also be of passing interest and return to the location as carelessly and carefully as the child desires. The other ants may swarm around when they sense a danger, with no idea what happened, and poof, after an undetermined period, the missing are found, sometimes mangled, sometimes fine, possibly hosted for a time, having eaten sugar from a host. Some are never seen again. They may be in ant farms, transported or backpacked into place lifetimes away, fed to a spider or burned with a magnifying glass. The conditions of their captivity do not align with those of the environment from which they were taken. The other ants don't have the perceptive range or ability to track such movements, and the communications of the returned ants make no sense to their perspective. A child at a summer camp could play in the same woods, finding a new generation of ants, visiting several ant generations later, doing the same thing next summer. Again, if we ignore motive and the tendency to find logical explanation, the methods appear to be quite similar. There may not be malice or even an understanding of the disruption in this that this causes. How aware are we of the life of an ant? In this great universe, we are but specks that blink out of our own existence, surely like ants to something somewhere. With more data, we might be able to better guess at the motives or the location of return, but perhaps if someone had a beacon, we could hone in on the events to get a better understanding. In closing, let me reiterate, I have the utmost respect for these efforts, and if anything other than the similarity I observed in the closest model I could find where action pattern fit the event, not predation, not mischief, not payback. Perhaps they are population studies, but the condition of the return has not yet shown a pattern. The physical circumstances have, but not the subject well-being, which would be of more importance if life data were the goal. Thanks for your caring and stewardship over the souls you come in contact with. There should be more people like you. You set a good example, and I'd be better having met you. I'm blessed. We're better having read your letter. Interesting. Very interesting. The ant perspective. I've talked kind of about that before on the ant farm, but I like the letters. It causes my mind to open up and think about the possibilities as well. So, got 3 stories for you today. And you're going to see a pattern here. Past couple of weeks I've talked about small children that disappeared and were later found. And I get these responses that, oh, it's obviously somebody in that community that did it. And then they just dumped the body. Or I get that, well, the search and rescue people just missed them. Or that the parents did it. Friends, I've written so many of these stories with so many law enforcement friends in the field looking for these people that law enforcement first thinks of the parents, always. And if there was an ounce of evidence pointing in that direction, they'd be going after them. But it's not. And as far as a suspect out there, if there was, the coroner's report on the body condition would support that. So let's move forward. First case. This is from the UK. Guy Norton, 5 years old, missing July 26, 1902, from Moat, M-O-A-T farm in Ash, Dover, UK, about 1.5 miles west of the Straits of Dover. Guy's parents were laborers, hard-working people that lived on this farm. They had the child playing in the front yard. Mom had watched it, come back in 5 minutes, child's gone, 5 years old. Knew the area, had walked around that area for many times. Child was familiar with this region, etc. Mom searches, gets the parents involved, gets her husband involved, gets relatives involved, and then gets the entire community and law enforcement involved. And pretty soon, there's hundreds of people looking for Guy. This went on for 6 days. The police made a statement that they thought the guy might have been kidnapped because there was such a lack of evidence of where he had been. But ongoing searches continued because the parents and the community, which was just absolutely distraught, kept looking for him. So, let me show you where this is. This is London. This is where Guy disappeared. This is the Straits of Dover. 1.5 miles between here and the ocean. 1.5 miles. So, August 29th, 34 days after Guy disappears, his body is found. Yeah. 1/4 mile from his home. An area that had been searched and looked over hundreds of times. They stated that the body was almost all bones, but it had his clothes on. So they showed the clothes to the parents and they ID'd those as being Guy's. And he was found in a field of clover, C-L-O-V-E-R. So there was an inquest. A coroner came, and they stated that the cause of death was exhaustion and exposure. This is in July. And they listed the cause of death as misadventure, being lost. Now, Guy had been through this community. He was 5 years old. He knew his way around the neighborhood. 1/4 mile is not far at all, folks. And he died of exposure 1/4 mile from his house in a field. And people were looking for him within hours after he disappeared. You got to be kidding me. Do I believe Guy was there when they were looking for him? No. Searchers would have found him, and Guy would have responded. Little boy's really cold, as they said he must have been. He would have been found, because he would have called out for help. That's case number 1. Now pay close attention as we go through case number 2. Case number 2, Edith Ann Cooper, 20 months old. Missing September 20th, 1954, from Fisk, Missouri. Fisk. Now, where's Fisk? So, this is Fisk. I'll show it to you on a map. River, 3 miles away, very close. So Edith Ann entered a cornfield with her brother and her sister. Her parents were on an adjacent field picking cotton. Rapidly, a thunderstorm rolls in and starts dropping rain like buckets. And eventually 2 inches of rain fall in that area. Well, the brother and the sister run back into the house, get the mom and dad, can't find Edith. Somehow, they couldn't explain it. She separates from them. So everyone that's working in that area, they get 50 people, and they start marching through the fields looking for her. Now, they never stated the distance, but 5 hours after she disappeared, she's found in a field of corn, surrounded by deep water because of this rain. And every article stated she was on the only dry mound of dirt anywhere in the area. And if she hadn't been on that mound of dirt, she would have drowned. Now, the St. Francis River was that river that flows right next to Fisk. Flows right next to the town. Now, why is this important? She's 20 months old. What are the chances of her staying on that dry mound? A lot of kids walk right into water. She didn't. It didn't say what her consciousness was like. Was she awake? Was she asleep? Those are important things. So it rained, and 2 inches of rain fell. 5 hours she stranded on this piece of dirt. Yet she didn't have hypothermia. And they never talked about her being wet. How can a young girl not have hypothermia after a sudden rainstorm like that in Missouri? And what are the chances that she stayed on the dirt and that she found the only dry piece of dirt in that field? 20 months old. Not really able to give a cogent statement about what happened. Next, well, you seeing any consistencies here yet? If you haven't, hold your taters. More's coming. Next case. So the case I just told you, September 20th, 1954. This case, June 4th, 1955. Christine Hart, 2 years old. She went missing at 7:45 in the morning from Niantic, Illinois, about 12 miles west of Decatur, Illinois. 12 miles west of Decatur. Here's the map. Here's St. Louis, Missouri. Here's Niantic. Basically a farming area. Not a lot out there even today. She's playing outside the family farm. And she's riding her tricycle. And she's also playing with her 9 puppies that were in the front yard with her. So at about 7:45, her mom looks at her, everything's fine, she's playing with the puppies, nobody's around. And about 15 minutes later, she goes out and look, tricycle's there, she's gone, puppies, a large percentage of the puppies, that's all it was said, were gone. She looks around, calls her name, gets no answer. Calls her husband, and they start calling people in the area. And pretty soon, they have a massive number of people there. At 10 p.m., they call the Macon County Sheriff's Office. At 1:30 that morning, multiple bloodhound teams arrive from a local prison. They don't pick up any scent. They can't get her to answer. They don't hear any puppies. They're really concerned. 6 a.m., they have 5 airplanes in the air looking over these fields for Christine. And they're not seeing anything. 400 searchers are now on the ground. 400. 7:45 a.m. 4 men volunteered their time from the community. They get given a grid to go out and search. So they leave the house and they're walking out to their grid area. And as they're walking out, they're 20 yards, 60 feet from Christine's house. And they find her and the missing puppies in an oat field. The article specifically stated Christine refused to talk to her mom about what happened that night. Why? What did happen? So the area was previously searched dozens of times. Point of separation from the time she left the presence of her mom. Canines from the prison, which are really good dogs, didn't pick up anything. And if nothing else, they should have picked up the scent of the other puppies. And the other dogs would have been barking because they would have heard the bloodhounds coming. None of that case makes any sense. None of it. Now, there's 3 cases. A 5-year-old, 20-month-old, and a 2-year-old. All disappear into a field. Friends, none of this makes sense. But I have 30 other cases just like this that also don't make sense, that are just like this. Now, you can say what you wish, but the reality of it is, these are strange and unusual events with some major consistent patterns inside. Now, would I like to interview a couple of these people? Sure, but I doubt at their ages they have any remembrance of what happened, of course. Many times, and as I've stated before, the victims are either too young to explain, have a medical condition that they can't explain what happened, or they have no memory at all of what happened. So what really did happen in these events? And considering the other disappearances that I've told you about earlier, what's going on here? And that's a perplexing part of missing 411 cases. I've written 11 books on this, all starting with missing 411. Do not buy my books on any websites, Amazon, eBay. They're going to charge you 3 and 4 times what we charge on our site. Our site is listed under the description of this video. It's Can-Am, like Canadian American, canammissing.com. If I'm ever not on YouTube any longer, that's how we'll communicate. Or you can find me at True Social at David Paulides, Paulides. Or you can find me on Twitter at David Paulides at Can-Am Missing. I'm on both platforms, posting daily. Now, I don't want you to get ripped off. A lot of libraries have my books, so you can go to a library, and if they don't have the book, request it. That's how they determine what they're going to keep in their library. And give them our website, and they'll order the book. But I'm very grateful that you're here and you're paying attention. And I can tell by the comments that many people are paying close attention. So, thank you. The thunder has passed through. Huck is probably in the next room asleep. And everything is quiet at the Paulides household. So I want you to have a good day. Go out right now. If you're going to go out into the world, do something nice for somebody. A little thing. But you'll feel good in your soul, and you'll make them have a nice day. Smile at people. It's a gesture that doesn't cost you anything. Paulides out.